All right, looks like we're live. Hello, everybody. My name is Christina. I'm an Android engineer at Pinterest, and I am so excited to be able to host this panel with so many of my friends today. I know that we have a lot of people joining us from across time zones, so it feels presumptuous to say good morning, but good time period wherever you are, whether that be morning, evening, lunchtime. We're so happy to have you here. I just want to start off with a couple of rules which will not take anybody who's been to a panel like this by surprise. And that is that the Googlers here can't answer questions about forward-looking projects or timelines, or if you ask them awkward things outside of their expertise, for instance, about like global warming, it's not going to go well. So please make sure that you don't ask about future-looking events, and that you also ask things that are particularly in the area of expertise of these people that we've gathered here for you today. It's something that I think we can often take for granted in the Android world, that we have access to the people who write our code and the code that we use at work, but it is something special. Not everybody has this, so let's make the best use of this time. And with that, I would like to have the panelists go ahead and introduce themselves. You probably know most of them, so the names won't be a surprise, but I'm going to put them on the spot and also ask them to share a fun fact. So because I'm asking this of other people, I can start. Like I said, my name is Christina, and a random fact about me is that if I were not in software, I think that I would be an HGTV fixer-upper host. Chet, if you want to start.
Oh wow! So we need a fun fact. I can't do the fun fact thing.
Yes,
sure.
you can. I believe in you, Chet.
Chet Haase, Android developer relations here. I think something might be helpful for the panelists is to say what area you work on, and therefore that gives people ideas of what questions we can actually answer. And my area is so vague as to not be helpful at all. History is more sort of in the graphics and UI toolkit and performance and animation space. And we'll see if I can help out in the MAD space today. Why don't we go in line in the videos that I can see? So we'll go sort of left to right and top to bottom. So Romain?
Sorry, Chet, I was not listening to you. What am I supposed to say?
What your area of expertise is, please.
My area of expertise, I'm really good at going to meetings. That's what I'm an expert at nowadays.
Perfect.
No, more seriously, yeah, anything graphics related on Android, and making Chet mad at me because I don't write my slides ahead of time.
That's a fun fact. I'm counting that. Ian, do you want to go next?
Sure. I work on fragments and navigation and a lot of the lower level things like lifecycle and activity in the Android X namespace. And my fun fact is I've lived in 9 states.
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate you, Chet, person who did not give a fun fact. And this panel is going great. I love it. This is lovely. I'm going to get invited back for sure. Daniel, I think, is that you in the corner? Do you want to go next? Oh, I think you might be muted.
Danny's muted. Oh. Shall we come back to Danny? Oh. Nope. Let's come back to Danny. Rahul?
Hi, my name is Rahul. I work on Work Manager, an app startup, and a bunch of other toolkit stuff. And fun fact about me is I can speak 7 languages.
That's awesome.
Java.
I'm having trouble reading the names.
Raluca.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Raluca, and I work on Android Studio on the tooling side, on IntelliJ, the Kotlin ID plugin, the bundled JetBrains runtime, and performance and stability of the ID, and Android Link.
Cool. Wojtek?
Hey, I'm Wojtek. I'm on the Android developer relations team. I work on Kotlin, app bundles, and Android Studio. And the fun fact is, I still didn't come up with a fun fact. That's how fun I am. So let's come back to that.
Perfect. Thank you. Can you please hold up my fun facts? I've only gotten 1. Well, no, actually 3. I take it back. I'm underselling this panel.
Okay, so my name is Yigit. I work in the toolkit, bunch of Flatfoot or Jetpack stuff. I don't really, fun fact is really hard to find, but one of my goals after this job is that Danny is going to create a bakery and I'm going to work there. And I'm working on it.
That's amazing.
Whoa.
Okay,
maybe
fun
you can
facts
hear
are,
me now?
yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you. Go ahead.
Nice. Okay, maybe I can go next. Sorry, Sumir. I am Daniel Santiago. I work for Yigit, but maybe one time he'll work for me on my bakery, I think, based on what he said. I can try and answer questions about Room and Dagger and Hilt, which are my area of expertise, so databases and dependency injection. Fun fact, yes, I like baking. I was thinking of another fun fact that is more recent. I play a lot of video games, and since Halloween, I've been playing scary games, and I get scared a lot, but I still play them, and it's always fun to jump. But there's some drive that keeps me going. I don't know what it is.
I appreciate that you say that because I can't watch scary movies because I get so scared. And I'm like, does nobody else feel this fear? Because I watch one and I can't sleep for a week. So I appreciate that response.
I stopped watching scary movies and playing scary games. I just look at my calendar and that's enough. That's scary enough for me.
Spoken like a true manager. Sumir, you want to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Sumir. I work on the toolkit team and also the graphics team. I'll be able to answer questions about Work Manager by pointing to Rahul and maybe some graphics questions by pointing to Chet and Romain. So I can delegate as well, I suppose. Fun fact about me, speaking of video games, I used to work in the game industry before I started at Google.
Whoa, that is fun. And then someone who is near and dear to my heart, do you want to introduce yourself next, Diana?
Sure. I'm Diana, also known as participant 942, blah, 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 whatever that number is. I am the product lead for Jetpack. Super excited to be here. I also work on just making sure our app ecosystem is healthy and able to develop across different versions and devices. Despite the lack of fun facts from this team, we really are a fun team, I promise. At some point, we'll all show how fun we are. Do I have a fun fact, though? My fun fact is this exact reason is why I've never applied to be on Jeopardy, because my fear of talking about fun facts of myself, which usually happens after the first commercial break, has always prevented me from going any further on Jeopardy. Not that I'm actually on Jeopardy, just to be humble, but
I love that. Yeah, you know, it's funny because I have the benefit of knowing almost everybody here offline and happen to know very well that everybody here is incredibly fun and has a lot of really interesting life experiences. So this is the most fun group of people who won't give a fun fact that I've probably ever been in the presence of. With that, though, we can get into questions. We have so many of them. I know a few people queued up some questions on Twitter before this panel even started. So I wanted to just start off with a few of those. The early bird gets the worm, as we might say. So the first one that I'm seeing is, what's the difference between using lifecycle scope or view lifecycle owner.lifecycle scope inside a fragment with the launch in flow operator? Are there any hidden gotchas there? And Ian, this one might be for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Fragments are in kind of a unique position where we have two life cycles. We have both the fragment itself and then the fragment's view. So when you put a fragment on the backstack, the fragment's view is destroyed, but the fragment itself stays around. So it's really important if you're using things for the fragment's view that you use the fragment's view lifecycle owner, which is correctly destroyed when the fragment's view is destroyed. So that kind of makes sure that all of the coroutines that you've set up and any flow collections, in this case, that you've set up get destroyed with the view. So they're not continuing to run even when the view is destroyed, the fragment's on the backstack or anything else. So you really don't want to be taking up memory in those cases.
Awesome, thank you. Another question that came in from Twitter is, the server returns items with IDs, and some of the returned items are duplicates, which may be spread across pages as well. I don't have control over the server and am using positional data source. How do I show only unique items on the UI in a recycler view? If you want to take this one, maybe?
I think, so for a case like that, you really cannot just do it with paging, because by design, paging is lazy, so it only loads the pages you need. So you might have some items in unloaded pages that will duplicate, and you cannot do that efficiently. The recommendation for that would be to use a local data store, something like Room. When you get the data from the server, just insert it into the database where you could deduplicate fields, and then for your UI, just show them from the database. This way, you will use the database as a deduplication engine, and then you won't need to worry about it anymore, and it will still be efficient.
Perfect. And then one more question from Twitter before we go over to the live Slido. This says, will you extend app bundles to allow for developer signed artifacts and no app signing? And Wojtek, maybe you could take this one.
Yeah, so this is a question from Mark, who wrote an article about the new app signing requirements for new apps that's coming next year. And I just want to say that we've all read the article. We get the feedback, and we are looking into it. Unfortunately, I don't have anything to announce yet, but we are exploring options on how we could alleviate some of the concerns in that article. So please give us more time, and hopefully sometime next year, we might come back with an answer. But we are looking into what's possible, so stay tuned.
Should we run this Q&A until next year? You know, like that much time? So we're just going to keep this open until then, until there's an answer.
Like, that's fine with me.
Okay, all right.
All right, sounds good. Now I can switch us over to some of the live questions. I see so many coming in. The most top voted one right now, which is a roadmap question. I know we said not to do roadmap questions, so you might not get an answer you like, but it says, is it on the roadmap to convert all Jetpack libraries to Kotlin?
I'll start answering, and then Yigit can contradict me if I say something stupid. No, mostly because why would we? So Jetpack, we have a lot of libraries. I keep losing track of how many libraries we have. It's something like over 80, and some of them have multiple artifacts. Some of the libraries work fine today, and they're also used by Java developers. So there's no reason to rewrite them. It would be a lot of work. It would be costly and risky, with little to no benefits. Now, that said, in areas where it does make sense, yes, we might look into that. I think paging is a good example. Recently rewriting a library, and Yigit can say more about that rewrite.
Yeah, I think, I totally agree. Also, because Romain is my manager, I'm supposed to totally agree. But yeah, when we have a reason, we are open to rewriting a library, but without a reason, we will not. So paging was great because we were about to move it to list server features. So instead, we moved it to core things, which became much nicer for us. But keep in mind, even if we move a library to Kotlin, we'll always think about what happens to existing Java users. So we'll figure out what the backwards compatibility story is, which also makes it much harder to move a library from Java to Kotlin because you need to keep the binary compatibility.
I wanted to jump in really quickly. Not that I know that much about paging, but we had a super interesting conversation with the engineers on paging on the podcast recently, and it was basically around this exact topic. It was why they chose to do the rewrite, and it was based on what they needed from the library and the capabilities there. So it's really
Whoa.
Oh wow.
Oh, this is fun. I was one of the only people left. I feel like there's a founding members club now of people who didn't get booted from the call.
Are we live or not?
I believe we are, but waiting for some of our members to come back.
Okay, so new rule from now on, we don't let Chet answer any questions because apparently
It crashes the call. I know.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the promo. I think when you promote your own content, it's just like an automatic boot from the call. but to recap, so pertinent to the question that was just asked, there's actually an in-depth podcast that talks about the reasons that library was ported, and maybe some other ones don't fall into that case. So if you want more details, go in and check out the podcast, and hopefully we won't all get booted from the call with this next question.
Wait,
yeah.
Can I add something? Sorry to interrupt.
Of course.
This all being said, any new library is very, very likely to be in Kotlin unless there's a very, very good reason not to be in a Kotlin. So it's kind of like the default is different from now on.
I would just add, like, the roadmap would be very long. We're really excited about Kotlin, as we've always been, and so I think you'll see the roadmap to be very invested in Kotlin first moving forward, or like us biasing towards Kotlin, but yeah, as for moving everything on Jetpack over to Kotlin, that would be a very, very long time. Yeah, there we go. That's all I'm going to say.
Awesome. Thank you so much to everybody for answering that. I feel like we got a lot of different viewpoints. All right, the next highest ranked question is, where is Dagger Hilt going? It doesn't seem to have evolved a lot from when it was initially launched.
Yeah, Danny, what are you doing?
Hi. Yeah, no, I'm working a lot. Don't say it's not moving. My boss is here. We're definitely done a lot of things. Please. Yeah. So one thing. So it's been a weird year. So that's for start. And as many other libraries, we want to get it right. So I know we've been on alpha for a bit, but once we get to beta, those APIs get locked. It doesn't mean the alpha version is not production ready. It just means that the APIs might change. So we just want to get that right. Another thing to keep in mind, we do have Dagger Hilt is being developed on the GitHub project in Dagger, and there's also the Android X extensions. Those extensions they don't have a lot of releases because they're pretty simple. The majority of the work is being done on the GitHub. So you might want to keep an eye on that one more than the other extensions. And, we've been trying to do some things to flush out the APIs and some of the concerns, like we added the ability for you to have install modules in Java and Kotlin only modules. We're trying to polish the testing API so that you can replace modules more easier. And then there's just other work we're trying to do on core Dagger to support Better Hilt and some other projects, like assisted injection, which is something we've been working out for a bit. And yeah, so I know it seems not a lot is going on, but a lot is going on, especially to say that every time you see it around, you tell him, yes, Daniel is working a lot. But stay tuned for sure. And please, if you try it out and have any concerns, please do let us know, either via GitHub or the issue tracker.
Awesome. Thank you, Danny. I mean, it sounds like a lot of work for me just listening to that long list. So I will vouch for you. He's doing a lot, so he deserves a raise.
Yes. Oh, do you hear that? Wait, let me record this.
Yeah. Where's that screen capture thing? Especially if you're gonna go work in his bakery someday, you just gotta make sure you have a good relationship there. All right. So let's see. Up next is how many live data should a view model ideally expose? Should we break the view model into multiple ones in the case of in case the live data count is higher? And there are a few people I think who are capable of answering this one. So whoever feels so moved.
I'll take it. I mean, it is like in any other class. When you have any class that has like too many public APIs, there's a tendency to divide it if it makes sense. So that will be the same answer here. Like if they become unrelated and it makes sense to divide them, feel free to divide them. But just don't do it for the sake of dividing it. You're gonna need a better reason.
Yeah, I'll add one thing to that is like that idea, like there's always that one class in your Android app that has everything in the kitchen sink. And like it was the activity, and now it's fragment. Like don't make it your view model, right? Like, you know, if they are separable pieces that are actually totally unrelated flows, then please just keep them as totally separate things. Like it'll make it easier for testing and, you know, try and reduce some of that coupling between things. But, you know, just try and keep in mind like the benefit of having that kind of that one state. And I think there's another question on the slide out here also, is like you really, if it is an atomic update, right, you have an old state and a new state, and you really need that to be in sync, it's much easier to do that as kind of one, you know, state object that's changing, rather than trying to coordinate, you know, multiple states like all changing at the same time, and there being some, you know, lag, whether it's just applying one versus the other in that ordering thing. Where, you know, you just want to keep that in mind, where if they are really kind of coupled together, then, you know, actually, you know, make that part of your contract.
Perfect. Oh, and the question you're referencing, the should we use live data or Kotlin stateflow?
Oh, well, that's an easy one.
Well, that one's up next. So do you want to give the easy answer?
You know, for me at least, like I think a lot of the flow APIs end up having a lot more of the transforms and a lot more of the higher level things that you'd actually really want to use. And even just some of the ability to like have suspending operations along that chain is going to be way easier to work with. And things like state flow and shared flow give you all of the kind of same functionality, but based on a lot nicer primitives of flow and suspend that, you know, you'll just never get when you're using kind of the 80% case that is perfect for live data. But, you know, one of the things I think, you know, Yigit can talk to a little bit more is like how we've tried to integrate in lifecycle and coroutines a lot closer together. So you still get a lot of the same functionality of like being lifecycle aware, you know, as kind of a default thing, even when you're using coroutines.
Yeah. Did you want to add anything there? Oh, or yeah, Wojtek.
Go ahead, Wojtek.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. In principle, I agree with everything that Ian said. It's nice to, like, if you're able to stick to one API and have flows all the way, that'll certainly make your life a little bit easier. However, I just wanted to say, you know, there's no reason to go and now like take out all the live data from your code if you're using them in the UI layer, like right now, and like, you know, feeling like you have to do it. It's completely fine to continue using it if you need to. Especially if you're using it, for example, with data binding, which has support for live data. However, we are adding support for stateflow to data binding. It should be available in the next Android Studio version. So we are bringing them, you know, to the same level of support for these few edge cases where you might want to still stick to live data now, but maybe there'll be no reason to in the future. So watch this space. More is coming. Also, new coroutine scopes are coming in for life cycles. They'll make working with flows a little bit better. So yeah, I think we're going to see how it evolves. But for the future, I would say probably stateful, but don't feel like you have to change.
Just super like quick clarification there. We are not going to deprecate live data or anything because we'll still keep supporting Java users. But if you're writing Kotlin coroutines, it's like, yeah, stateflow should be your default.
Perfect. And guys, we have so many questions on this topic. So let me take one more that's now at the top of our voting list, which is, what is your preference on view model exposing a single live data representing the states of the views versus exposing multiple live datas?
Ian, do you want to take it?
Yeah, this was kind of the point that I had of like, what's the atomic unit here? So, you know, really trying to keep track of like, well, if these things really are related and your UI would make no sense if they weren't related. then they should probably be one single state that's being, updated as one atomic update. But if they really are like completely separate and it would make total sense for just a part of your UI to update and the other part to remain the same, then, that's kind of the, North Star that I'd use to kind of figure out which case is the right one.
Perfect. There's more on RX and flow and coroutines, but let me see if we can get a different topic in here really quickly, and then we can always come back. Let's see. So there's one on Camera X. It says Camera X currently focused mostly on pictures. When are we going to see more love on the video side of things? Diana, if you want to take that.
We have the Camera X team on the call, but I can answer that. As many of you may know, the Camera X library has been in alpha and beta for quite a while. And so their first priority is trying to get a version of Camera X out to stable. That being said, video capture and video capture support is something that they are very interested in. So while I can't give any timelines, it is something that they would very much like to tackle.
I will be very interested in this as someone who will be a consumer of that. Perfect. Okay, so let's see. We can go back to the top of the list, which says, are there any guidelines on mixing RX and coroutines or flow? When should you use what in your app?
Okay, so guidelines, unless you already have an app with RX and you're trying to add coroutines or vice versa, don't mix them. Like, there's no reason to mix them intentionally. In fact, we are bound to do this for libraries like paging, which tries to provide both coroutines and RX APIs. It's not that straightforward. So try to avoid that, except for the transition period when you're moving from one technology to the other one. For interoperability, Wojtek, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we have any documents on that, but Kotlin has, JetBrains has a bunch of documents on coroutines and RX interoperability.
They certainly have a bunch of libraries that provide like different converters from, different futures or RX to coroutines and flows. I'm not sure about docs. However, yeah, I agree with you. You should avoid it, but sometimes if you're like maybe using a library that provides an API that maybe is RX, you can certainly use, adapters and just make it work with whatever you are using. But the one thing I would watch out for is like not having every different part of your app using like a different thread pool for things. If possible, try to inject your own and make sure that everything works together on a same number of threads and not just. But that's one thing that comes to mind. I don't know what else to add.
Perfect. All right. We can move on to the next question. It has a link in it, so I've opened that for you. But the question says, when are you going to prioritize bug fixes that were there for years? And they link to one in particular, which is about context.startForeground service. Didn't actually call service.startForeground. So maybe Sumir, if you want to answer this one.
Sure. So this one was marked as fixed, and I just kind of quickly went through this. So this is the first time I'm seeing this issue. It seemed like it was a particular set of OEMs that had this issue. Little hard to get that fixed immediately, but this is something that we've been looking at. We're in constant communication with other OEMs at all times, or trying to make the compatibility story better. This is a big focus for example, Diana and me specifically. We are talking and in constant communication. So there's a lot of work that happens that we don't always talk about, and it doesn't show up in the form of like a Jetpack library or a release. But even with all the work managers work that we've done, we've been in communications with OEMs to make sure that that there are compatibility requirements and changes that we're surfacing to everybody. So I can't answer about this bug specifically, but it is something that we prioritize.
Yeah, and to answer the more general question, we do prioritize bugs as much as we can, but we have limited resources, so we have to make decisions constantly, and we know that unfortunately we will always disappoint someone, and we wish we could solve everything, but we can't.
Understandable. All right, let's see. So jumping topics again, just to make sure we cover some things that everybody is interested in. There's another question on the list that says, does Google work closely with Gradle? I know you're more on the JetBrains side of things, but would you be able to answer that one?
Sure, I can tell you that from my experience, we're doing all we can to share code early with our partners. So part of the Android Studio and Android Gradle plugin code is available in AOSP. We put tags in there so they can access the latest Android Studio and Android Gradle plugin releases. And there are weekly syncs and statements of work and OKRs, shared OKRs with both companies.
Awesome. All right, back to the most upvoted question. What we have here is it possible to verify that an APK on the Play Store matches its open source code repository? Is it possible to do that with app bundles as well? I don't know whose area of expertise this is, so if someone wants to jump in.
Me. Let me see. I don't believe you can verify that it matches the exact source code. You can verify if it's been signed by a particular key, so you can compare it with a public certificate of the developer. I don't believe you can verify if it's one-to-one the same source code for APKs or app bundles. I don't think that's possible. However, as I said before, we are looking into more opportunities in this space. So if we have something, I'll let everyone know.
Perfect. Back to our favorite topic of the day. It's so many questions about RxJava or any of these reactive libraries. It says, can Kotlin coroutines do as much as ReactiveX RxJava? This is a very subjective question, so anybody feel free to express yourself.
See, Christina, this seems like a perfect question for you.
I know, right? I was like, I have opinions. They're completely, subjective and not based on reason or fact. I'll give you an opinion. No, but it is a hard question to answer. I think this is probably it really depends situation. So we'll give the Googlers a pass on backing themselves into a corner on this one. It is Monday after all, everybody. We need to be nice. Now, okay, let's see. Oh, here's an interesting one. Okay, how do I maintain the ability to do cross installs between Google Play and alternative app stores with app bundles specifically?
Yeah, that's possible. So with app bundles, you obviously have to use Play app signing. So you have to upload a key to Google Play servers, and Google Play will sign the app on your behalf. However, you can upload an existing key, so the one that you use to distribute your app to other stores. As long as you do that, you will be able to, well, I'm not sure what the person means by cross-install, but I suspect they want to be able to update the app that was installed by another distribution channel. So that's possible if you use the same key.
Perfect. And then it looks like this next question might be going to Danny, which is, does Google have a recommendation about a concrete dependency injection tool? Dagger, Coin?
Oh boy, spicy question. No, so we have some opinion on this. We actually recommend Dagger, and we talked about this a bit on the Android Dev Summit of 2019. We had a session and a talk about why we recommend Dagger. We feel Dagger scales across small and big apps. It's very runtime, performant, and then some of the kind of troubles you have with Dagger, specifically how it could be complex, most of those are solve with HILT. So to be more precisely, our recommendation is to use HILT, but HILT and dagger together. So yeah, so we say, hey, please use HILT. It's really dagger. And then there's quite a few reasons, but I would suggest to go back to that ADS talk where we go more into detail around that. Hopefully that answers it.
Perfect. So there's another question here about view models, but I was talking to the panelists and they kind of felt like, we've talked through this quite a bit and they don't have any extra information to add to this one. So for this, please refer to the answers previously given on a bunch of the view model questions. And we'll go ahead and go to the next one in the list, which is, should libraries be written in Kotlin or Java? If Kotlin, will it work well with apps written in Java?
I can take that. So at least for Android X or Jetpack, we prefer to write them in Kotlin, as I mentioned before. But when you do that, we have a bunch of rules to make sure it is usable from Java. So if you do that and you want your users to be able to use Java, you need to make sure your API is usable. That's partially through API guidelines we have internally, so I don't think they're public, but then partially through just writing sample apps that exercises your API service through Java to make sure it looks nice.
Awesome. All right. I love this next question because it's one that I actually talk about with my developer group quite a bit, and there are so many valid opinions here. But the question is, what is your language recommendation for new programmers to start Android development? Can we go Kotlin first? Chet, do you want to lead us off there?
Sure. It could be an interesting discussion in the panel. As you say, I think there are a lot of different opinions in here. All of them are correct except mine. So it kind of depends on the context you're coming in. If you're actually super new to programming overall, I think it might be a little trickier to start in that language than some of the other ones, just because it is a newer language with fewer broad resources. Like, I kind of like to start in any, completely new field by, you get a book, you read it, you sort of get the mental model and go from there. And I think some of the assumptions in Kotlin are that you are already using an object-oriented language with some of these capabilities in it. And then you're applying the new context to your existing knowledge, right? And I think if you're completely new to programming, completely new to software, don't even know how to spell object-oriented, maybe that first step is going to be a little bit tall. There are some resources, like we have a course that is intended for people new to programming, and you're introduced to Android and Kotlin and programming all at the same time. But I think the channels of learning are going to be necessarily narrower, rather than, if you wanted to learn Java programming language, infinite resources, it's a little hard to figure out where to start even, whereas it's going to be a little bit more focused on the Kotlin side. But I am curious what other people thought.
Yeah, does anybody else want to chime in here?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, purely from a personal perspective, I would say it's completely fine to go Kotlin first, and I would recommend myself to go Kotlin first. I get the point that Chet is making, but at the same time, it feels like if you go with that train of thoughts, like, you would start from assembly and start learning every new language that came on top of it before you make your way to Kotlin. So I exaggerate a little bit, but I think one of the issues, because Kotlin was picked up by existing Java developers, a lot of the discussions and courses were centered around moving those developers to Kotlin. But I honestly don't think that Kotlin is a harder language to learn. Actually, it might be slightly easier for a newcomer because they don't have to unlearn some of the habits they had with Java, for instance. And that's true of other pairs of languages, right? It's not specific to Kotlin, I think. And besides, if you look at there are generations of languages. So if you look at things like modern JavaScript or Swift, you see a lot of resemblance between those languages. So it's, again, not specific to Kotlin.
I just wanted to talk to a few points that Chet mentioned about the resources that are available for learning. That might be true, but I think that will be changing quickly. Like Kotlin is really getting picked up by a lot of people learning to program right now, and from our side, we're actually trying to help. So we not only have courses available to everyone online who wants to even start programming, and we teach both Kotlin and Android at the same time. But we're also trying to spin up many programs working with universities and trying to work together with JetBrains to teach people all around the world to start with Kotlin. And so I think that's going to be changing. So we can certainly see a lot more of that in the future. It looks like, are we running out of time, or what is that?
I believe that's a 10-minute time check, yeah.
And the only other thing I wanted to add is, I think many people ask that question because they think, they're both JVM languages, and so should people have that knowledge about internals of how Java works, how the JVM works, and how it all gets compiled into DEX bytecode, and maybe they're afraid that if they start with Kotlin, they will not have that knowledge about this huge ecosystem of libraries and how everything works. And I think that's a valid concern. It certainly helps to have that additional context, but I don't think it's something that prevents you from starting to write code and starting to write apps. You can start with Kotlin and learn programming, and only after that try to get really deep into the internals and understand how everything works underneath. I don't think it's you need it from the start.
Yeah, I will also say, if you're thinking about the far future and Jetpack Compose, that'll be a lot easier pill to swallow if you already know Kotlin. So do kind of consider that that idea of unlearning things to relearn that. If you're thinking about getting into programming now, that might be a very different experience in a few years' time. Where having that base in Kotlin will certainly help you kind of make the most out of all the libraries and tools that we provide.
Yeah, I was going to just add that no matter which language you learn, and I do think Kotlin's probably the right one if you're just starting off, I just continue learning. I think there are assumptions and things that Kotlin optimizes for as any other language will optimize for. So, sometimes knowing the implementation details of why one particular operator or method is better than another one is very important as time goes on. So, don't stop with just the base Kotlin, keep learning the rest of it. There's reasons why Java made the decisions it did. There's reasons that C and C++ are the way they are. So just kind of keep going on with those learnings.
Perfect. I really enjoyed hearing the kind of cross talk there in terms of having so many different opinions on this. That was a great question. So the top voted one right now is RoboElectric tests on API 30 plus requires JDK 9 plus, but Android Studio runs on JDK 8. Are there any good ways to circumnavigate this problem? We currently run our RoboElectric test on API 29. Or are there any plans for Android Studio to support running on JDK 9?
I can try and answer that. In Android Studio 4.2, we made the switch to JDK 11. So from Android Studio 4.2 onwards, we are bundling and running on JDK 11, and the Android Gradle plugin even is going to target JDK 11 in the next version. So please try out the almost beta 4.2 and let us know if you see any issues with JDK 11 support.
Oh, so alpha, I get it. Alpha stands for almost beta. It's like the Greek letter for A. So yeah, I like it. Makes sense now.
Today I learned. Perfect. So yeah, just a heads up to everybody listening in. We have so many wonderful questions. We're not going to get through them all. This is our 5-minute time check. So if you feel very strongly, please upvote very aggressively right now. We probably have time for maybe 2 more. The top voted one right now is, can you please provide some real life examples of cases where downloading some part of the app might be postponed and downloaded on demand?
Real life, I can try to answer that. Still hypothetical. I'm not saying these apps do that, but these would be things that are heavy in size, but not used by a lot of users of your app. So potentially, hypothetically, an app like YouTube, probably most people watch videos, right? Not many people upload them, or not as many as we have people consuming the content. So in theory, we could think of that part that uploads videos. Maybe it uses some native code for compression. Maybe it's a lot of megabytes in size. Maybe it's not needed for everyone who's just watching videos. Maybe you can download it later on once a person says, I'm an uploader, I want to start uploading videos. So that's one use case I could think of. I'm sure you can come up with more in your apps that you're developing.
Yeah, actually, another more general example is augmented reality, applications that have an AR component. That's a feature that not necessarily everybody will use. So it's just an extra feature in the app. And it requires extra libraries.
Play asset delivery for games as well, like levels. That's like my canonical example is I'm not on that level yet. I probably never will be.
Yeah, for games, it's a little bit different. So probably most games that use huge textures and levels will use play asset delivery from the very beginning. So maybe they will have like the code to show you the menu, but you will have to wait for actually downloading the level content. So because they are usually multiple gigabytes in size. So that's another way you would use it.
Perfect. Okay, so the top voted question right now. Wow, you guys really responded. Thank you. This is wonderful. It went from like 8 votes to 16. Okay, if you're starting a brand new Android app today, what architecture would you use? MVVM, MVP, something else?
I mean, it all depends. I mean, it's, I would probably start with whatever I'm most comfortable with. And if I see it not working, I will look for a change if it is working. Like the thing about these architectures are they actually have similar behaviors with some nuances depending on your use case. If you're aware of those use cases, you will pick the more appropriate one. If you're not aware of those use cases, you go with the most familiar one. And if it doesn't work, you change along the way.
Perfect. And then just wanted to hop around a little bit in the questions. This might be our last one, we'll see. So there's a question that says, since we started integrating Work Manager, we noticed a bump in ANRs caused by, there's a stack trace here, or not a stack trace, but a class name that basically is the reschedule receiver. And the question is, how would we avoid ANRs caused by Work Manager?
I can take that. So that is a receiver that essentially reschedules all your work. This usually happens when the device restarts and the boot completed receiver fires. And usually this does not point to a problem in Work Manager itself. It's probably the app doing too much work in the main thread. So Work Manager is very careful about doing all its work on a background thread. So if you're seeing this, then you should try and profile your app and file a bug, and I can help you track down the bug, and I can help you track down what might be going on.
Okay, Christina, this is Greg. Hey, we are 2 minutes till the next session starts, so we've got to call it, unfortunately, to an end. I have absolutely enjoyed the panel, and you've done such a fantastic job, Christina. We're so grateful to have you with us.
Thanks.
So what we will do, team, we have archived the questions. I will make sure that these questions go to Chet and Romain, and they can find out how to answer those either through any of your channels or whatever, but we'll make sure that the questions are all archived, anything that was unanswered.
I want to thank Christina too, and thank everybody for allowing me to drag you into this thing. This is fun.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you everybody for being here today and answering questions, and for everybody who tuned in. See you all on the interwebs.